Okay. So it's nice to be able to learn together before every holiday. It's very, very special. And we've been learning together before each holiday. And of course, on Thursday mornings with Hindi at 10 o'clock. But with me before the holidays. And personally, for me, I really enjoy delving into the holiday and kind of stopping and getting ready spiritually, and educating myself and kind of like relearning the holiday, because as we've said in the past many times, that the holidays come around every year, but it's like a spiral. So where you were last Pesach, last Passover, is not where you are now. You're in a different place, and Pesach means something different to you this year than it did last year, because every holiday is a very personal experience. And especially Pesach, it really is, Passover is a really spiritual and personal experience, because Pesach is a time where we don't look back and say, oh, this is an exodus that happened to our ancestors. But it's really a time to implement and really look at this holiday as it's a personal liberation. You have to, even though it happened so many thousands of years ago, it's a time to reflect on the meanings of Pesach and to realize that it's very much a relevant modern holiday, because each of us has our own constrictions and needs to be liberated in some way. And so the Pesach Seder is a real opportunity that provides us with spiritual energy to access freedom in our personal lives. It's not just to remember that our ancestors were slaves in Egypt. That's not why we get together around the Seder twice on Pesach, to just talk about that our ancestors were enslaved and were taken out of Egypt. But it's an opportunity for us personally to be liberated from whatever constrictions or slave-like mentalities that we are presently in. Because slavery is not just working hard. We have slavery in our day and age, and each one of us is a slave to something else. And it's Pesach when we kind of have some introspection and say, well, what am I a slave to, and how can I liberate myself from that slave mentality, whatever it is. Another name, interestingly enough, for Pesach is man cherutenu. The suffix is nu, a time of our liberation. It's not a liberation, like I said, it is a liberation of our ancestors, yes, but it's very much zman cherutenu, a time of our liberation, not just for our ancestors. It's a personal liberation to leave our own limitations, whatever it is. Now, the Seder consists of 15 steps. And when I was thinking of like, okay, which angle am I going to take for this holiday class? You know, we've focused on so many different angles. And I thought, you know what, let's delve into the 15 steps. Each step, because it's a blueprint. Each step is a blueprint towards psychological, emotional, and spiritual liberation. You can't just, it's not that there's like randomly 15 steps and this is what you have to do for the Seder, you get through it, and L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim. That's not what it's about. These 15 steps are truly a blueprint towards psychological and spiritual liberation. And we can go through the Seder by rote, or we can truly internalize each Seder step to make it life transforming for the new year. And I say new year because Nisan is the first month on the biblical calendar. So in the Torah, Nisan is the first month. So hopefully the lessons that we discuss tonight will last going into the new year. And tonight we're going to learn each step in depth. And I'm going to focus on one or two lessons for each step, and what I'll call like a liberation or a meditation for our lives. So each step we'll learn 1 to 3 lessons for each step, and then at least one meditation that will allow us and help us to liberate ourselves from whatever liberation we need, because it's a very personal thing. Each one of us needs to be liberated in a different way, depending on what's going on in our lives. So if we do the inner work, we will truly experience an uplifting and personal redemptive Pesach. And hopefully on the 15th of Nisan, which is the first day of Pesach, we can tap into our own liberation to liberate ourselves from ourselves. And it's a personal thing that the work has to be done by us. Nobody can do the work for you. You have to do the work for yourself. And hopefully by going through these 15 steps and learning what each one is about and how to really internalize it and actualize it, we will be liberated from whatever liberation we need. So may I suggest that you take a pen and paper if you'd like, because I'm going to be sharing a lot of information and it could come out to be one jumble, and it'll be hard to remember because there's so many steps and so many lessons and meditations, that I suggest that perhaps if you'd like to take a pen and paper to jot down at least one lesson and one personal meditation you will take away from each step, and perhaps even use one of the lessons we learned tonight at your Seder. So I'll give you a minute to grab a pen and a paper, and we will start with the first step of Kadesh. So we begin the Seder by reciting a blessing over wine. Kadesh is the first step. What does Kadesh mean? Kadesh has 2 meanings. Kadesh means to sanctify, okay? To sanctify, from the word kadosh, to make holy. So Kadesh means to sanctify, and we sanctify God's name and the wine by blessing it. Now, Kadesh also means to separate, referring to the separation from between holy and mundane. So when we recite Kiddush, we recite Kiddush and we separate the 6 days of the week from Shabbat. Same with the holidays. We recite Kiddush and we're separating the mundane days from the Shabbos or the holiday that we're celebrating. But why do we make Kadesh over wine? Why does it want? Why are we choosing wine to make Kiddush or Kadesh in terms of Pesach? Why wine? Because most things in life diminish with time. But wine gets better with time. So we recite Kiddush over wine to symbolize that each year we experience Pesach on a higher level, achieving greater spiritual heights and deeper understanding and connection to our souls, to God, to the holiday that, like I said in the beginning, like that each year it's like a rung, like we're not in the same place this year that we were last year. Hopefully we're on a higher rung or realm. And so like wine, it only gets better. Now, why do we call the blessing over wine on Pesach Kadesh, not Kiddush? On Shabbat, on holidays, we say, okay, let's make Kiddush, let's get the wine and make Kiddush. On Pesach, we call everyone to the table for the Seder by saying Kadesh. If Kadesh is Kiddush, why do we have to switch up Kiddush to Kadesh? Like we do the rest of the year, we call it Kiddush. Now, Kadesh means you shall sanctify. It's Kiddush is sanctification, but Kadesh means you shall sanctify. It's more of an instruction. Why do we need instruction? So getting into the story of Pesach, a slave is just trying to survive. He or she doesn't have the fortitude, the energy, or the ability to elevate him or herself. He can't sanctify his life. He's just too busy being a slave. He's too preoccupied with his work. But a free person, however, can go about bringing sanctification into the world, making a difference and transforming the world around them. So as Jews and as free Jews, our mission is to sanctify our surroundings, making a difference in the world. And our mission statement is to go out and bring godliness into the world. It's almost like an instruction, Kadesh, you shall sanctify. Your mission is to go out into this world and make this world a place where God feels comfortable, meaning make it a place of holiness so God could reside in this world. You shall sanctify. It's not a statement, it's an instruction to go out and make the world a holy place. That's our mission. Kadesh, you shall sanctify. Go out, know your mission, know the purpose that you're here to make this world a dwelling place. How do we do that? By bringing more spirituality and holiness into this world. So our meditation for Kadesh is to separate. Reciting Kiddush, designating or separating the time as sacred, meaning we could learn from Kadesh to separate, to designate a space in your psyche that's sacred, that's pure, that's innocent, curious. Allow yourself to separate and to sanctify some quality time for yourself. There's so much static in the world around us, and we need there's so much static, it's hard to allow ourselves, we need to be able to allow ourselves to listen, for introspection, for growth. The world is moving so quickly that we could learn from Kadesh, and I could personally learn this, to, as busy as we are and as much static as there is around us, we need to carve out a little bit of time for introspection, to listen to ourselves, which leads to growth. You cannot grow spiritually or emotionally in a hustle bustle. You need to take time to Kadesh, to separate, have some time for introspection, and hence growth. Our second step after we make Kiddush, Kadesh, is Orchatz. So what do we do at Orchatz? Orchatz, we wash our hands without a blessing. We go to the sink, we wash our hands, we don't say Al Natilat Yadayim, we don't say Hamotzi, it's before we dip the vegetable, we go to the sink, we wash our hands, we come back, no blessing. So what is the lesson here for Orchatz? Now, after Kadesh, we remove the dirt and the grime. There's more spiritual work to be done. We did Kadesh, now we need to wash our hands because there's more spiritual work to be done. And we wash our hands and we don't eat. If we don't eat, why are we washing our hands if we don't eat? And I'm not talking about for sanitary reasons. I'm talking about, the Natilat Yadayim. Why are we making Natilat Yadayim if we're not eating? And this is a very important lesson in terms of Judaism, to show that in Judaism, the importance is action. We elevate the hands, which symbolize action. The path to spirituality and holiness is through action. By washing our hands, we're elevating our hands. There's nothing else that's necessary. We're not making a blessing. We're not eating anything. We're just washing our hands. And this is a lesson that action is where it's at when it comes to Judaism. Faith is important, but it's not enough. Faith is not enough. Action is where it's at, because action is spiritual. Why is action spiritual? Because it's the action that leads to spirituality, meaning you can go off into the mountains and live a very spiritual life, but if you're not actually doing the mitzvah, you can learn about it, but if you're not actually doing it, that's not where Judaism is at. It's about the action. Take a leap of action, not a leap of faith. And that's the lesson. I'm not negating faith. Emunah, faith is very important, but action is really where it's at. Judaism is more about action than faith because mitzvos are for action. So the hands symbolize action, that the priority in Judaism is action. Of course, we need faith, but if somebody doesn't have faith and they're kind of not, I don't want to say like faking it till they're making it, but just, you know what, I don't necessarily believe it, but I'm going to do it because I know it's the right thing, then the faith will come. Then the answers will come. Action is where it's at. And in terms of the meditative point on Orchatz is obviously Orchatz is washing our hands, and that's cleansing. So you clean your hands, we clean our hands from our environment of uncleanliness. So whatever that uncleanliness is, we cleanse. You cleanse your life from negativity. It could be destructive behaviors, addictions. It could be anything like white lies or things that you might be doing that are more negative. And you cleanse yourself from all that negativity and you start anew. Because no liberation is possible without this step. Cleanse yourself from negativity. You can't say that you're going to be, liberate yourself and become a better person if you don't cleanse yourself. If you don't get rid of the negativity or destructive behaviors, you cannot go. That's kind of like one of the first steps of being liberated is cleansing oneself so you can go forward and for renewal. Now, the third step is karpas. So now we've washed our hands, we come to the table, and we're going to eat a vegetable dipped in salt water. And this is when we make the blessing. We make a hadama. We take a vegetable. Some people take a potato or a piece of celery, and they dip it into salt water. So what's the lesson of karpas, of eating a vegetable dipped into salt water? That's when we reflect on the bitterness of slavery by obviously dipping it into salt water. So we think about our ancestors. But what does that mean for us? Now, in the Manashtana, we ask 4 questions. There is an introductory question, and then there's 4 questions. But one of the questions of the Manashtana is, why do we dip twice? First time we dip karpas, the vegetable, in salt water. And then later on in the maror, we're going to dip maror in charoset. So the question from the Manashtana is, why do we dip twice? But if you think about it, where's the answer to the question in the Haggadah to why we dip twice? The other questions are answered as we read through the Haggadah, but this question of why do we dip twice is not answered in the Haggadah, at least not to the naked eye, not to the Haggadah that we're actually reading. So why isn't there an answer to the question, why do we dip twice? And the answer is because we're not very proud of the answer. We're not proud of the answer. It's like something that happened in the family that we'd rather not discuss. So it's not in the Haggadah. But if you read, commentaries, the answer goes back to the story of Joseph, a story that led us into this slavery in the first place. What's the connection to the dipping? How do we remember the story of Joseph, the embarrassing story of Joseph, by dipping? What are we saying by dipping about Joseph? So if you remember the story of Joseph, there's 2 dippings that are in the story. So the first dip is referring to the dipping of the coat of many colors into the blood of an animal for the brothers to create an alibi for their father for Joseph's disappearance. What they do, they took the colored coat and they slaughtered an animal, they dipped it into an animal's blood, and they told their father that the animal attacked Joseph and he died. Now, that is the blood that led us into exile. So the first dip that we do, the karpas, the vegetable into salt water, reminds us of that first dip when the brothers created an alibi by dipping the coat of many colors into the blood. Now, the second dip, what's the second dip? The second dip is the maror in charoset, where we take the maror, we put it into romaine lettuce, and we dip it into the charoset. By the way, romaine lettuce, the root of romaine is very bitter. And so the romaine is also considered maror. We take the maror, we wrap it into the romaine lettuce, and we dip it in the charoset. Now, the second dip is the dip of redemption. Where do we see another dipping? So that's in the dipping of the blood. It says, take a bundle of hyssop and dip it into the blood of the korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb. So Jews were instructed to slaughter a lamb and to take a bundle of hyssop, to dip the hyssop into the blood, and then take that blood and put it around the doorpost. Okay, now you take that blood, they put it around the doorpost, and that was for the angel to pass over their door to protect them from the plague of the firstborn. So there's two dippings, right? The first dipping was with the coat of many colors, okay? And the second dipping was the dipping of the hyssop into the blood of the Paschal lamb. Then that blood went over around the doorpost, which showed the angel of death where the Jewish people lived, and he passed over them to protect that household from the plague of the firstborn. Now, the second dipping, this dipping is the dipping of liberation, right? We take maror, we wrap it in romaine lettuce. What does that mean that we wrap it in? It symbolizes unity. We take the maror, we wrap it in romaine lettuce, and then we dip it into charoset. So this bundle, okay, this dipping represents unity, togetherness. So the first dip was baseless hatred, right? That was the brothers' baseless jealousy, baseless hatred against Joseph. So that first dip is the baseless hatred. And what do? We reverse that dipping with baseless love. We reverse the baseless hatred with baseless love and unity. We transform the bitterness and sadness into sweetness. How? Through unity. So those two dippings are a nod to the story. That's why, that's the answer to why we dip. We dip to remember the two dippings that happened with Joseph and with the Jews in Egypt. So how can we glean a meditation from karpas, from dipping? Now, if we look at the vegetable, right? The vegetable grown in the ground represents the body, okay? Now, salt water, so we're taking the vegetable, right? And we're dipping it. Now, the salt water represents obviously the salty tears that were shed by the Jewish people, but it also represents in our emotional and painful times. Now, salt, as we know, is a cleanser, and tears are also a cleanser of the eye. Now, the eye it's also a representation of the soul. So when we cry, I always say like, oh, like I'm getting emotional at whatever it is, if it's a happy occasion or whatever, the soul is sweating, so to speak. Your eyes are tearing up because your soul is sweating and your soul is speaking through your eyes. Your soul is expressing itself through the tears. Now we cleanse our body with our soul's tears, freeing ourselves from the illusion that the material world is the only reality. The vegetable growing low from the ground, on which we make the blessing, he created fruit from the ground, Borei Peri Hadama, symbolizes the body created from the earth, right? Now, the vegetable reminds us that the prerequisite for spiritual liberation is to recognize that our bodies and all of its dispositions are a means to an end. They need to be submerged in the waters of inspiration and Torah. A body on its own is just a material physical object. The body must be immersed, right, in the waters of Torah. And we shouldn't allow our cravings to or whatever the craving is to define us. We must define them. So do not allow them to take you hostage, but see them as a means for your journey. So whatever it may be, whatever is holding you back, you can see it as a stepping stone, as a means for your journey. They are here to be defined and explained by you. Your body is holy, and you should be used to illuminate your surroundings. Your faults don't define you. You and your positive actions define it. So it's like get unstuck, that you are limited by your limitations, meaning we all have limitations. What are we going to do about them? Are we going to allow them to define us? Or are we going to say, these are my limitations, but I'm going to go beyond my limitations and not let my limitations limit me? And that's really the meditation that we need to take, is we look at that vegetable, we look at the salt water, and we look at the vegetable as the body, the material. We look at the salt water, even though it's salt you think is negative, it's not, but it's because it's a cleanser, as the water is a cleanser. We take the body and we put it into the water, into the soul, and together, if we do that, if we submerge our body in Torah and mitzvot and holiness, we could transcend our limitations without delay. But we need to kind of marry our body and our soul together. And that dipping reminds us that we have the body, but we also have the soul, which is thirsty for Torah. Now we're up to yachatz, which is breaking the middle matzah. So we take the middle matzah and we break it. And which one do we hide? We hide the larger one. We hide it for the afikomen. So whatever, side is larger, that's the one we wrap up, and we hide it for the afikomen for later. Now, yachatz has three interesting lessons, three very different lessons, but I thought that they would be good for this class, and they were interesting, so I wanted to include all three. So we break and hide the bigger piece, which is hidden, okay? And this, I saw an interesting word on this, that the large piece that's hidden represents Jews that are not connected. So there are Jews that are hidden. And in terms of yachatz, we have hope. We learn hope and humility. Hope that the Jews that aren't connected, we know that, and hope that they will return, just like that piece of the afikomen is returned, just like the matzah we bring back for the afikomen. Jews who are not connected will return. We do believe that those who are not connected, and that's really one of the missions for us to do, is that we're all students, but we're also all teachers. So if you know somebody who's not as connected, it's your chance to bring them in, to expose them to a mitzvah, to the shul, to the Torah, to something you learn, to bring in as many Jews as possible, because ultimately we do believe that all the Jews will return together. But listen, the truth is that not all Jews are connected to their Judaism. They are connected, they're Jews, and they're very much connected through their soul, but in terms of action, they're not so much connected. And so when we break that matzah and we put it away, we could think of the Jews the Jewish people around the world who are not so connected like we are. They're not coming together on a Thursday night to learn about Pesach. And try to, encourage those people to try to be a little bit more connected. And we do hope that in the future, more and more Jews will come back, so to speak, and reconnect. Now, breaking the matzah in half also teaches us to share. So even if you have just one small matzah and you break it in half, there's always room to share with others. Even if you have a little of something, there's always enough to share. And the third lesson of breaking the matzah is that the breaking the matzah teaches us humility and vulnerability. In general, the whole idea of matzah and challah, we've spoken in the past that, challah is, puffy and egotistical. I don't want to put down challah, but if you're looking to learn from challah versus matzah, matzah is the bread of humility. It's small, it's thin, it's flat. So matzah teaches us humility and vulnerability. You must have people in your life with whom you are completely open and honest and vulnerable. The fake sense of I am whole is the greatest obstacle to genuine liberation. Basically, we're only whole if we're together, and we need to be, we all have a part of us that's broken, and we need to find people or a friend, or even one friend, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, aseh lecha rav, to choose somebody that you could confide in, someone you can talk to. Not go around thinking, oh, I'm perfect, oh, I'm whole. No, we're broken, and it's okay. We need to find a person, aseh lecha rav, somebody that we can designate to be our mentor, so to speak, somebody that we can be completely open and honest and vulnerable, because the fake sense of I am whole is truly the greatest obstacle to genuine liberation. Now, in terms of our meditation, we go back to the matzah. Matzah consists of the bare minimum of flour and water without any inflating ear. It represents bittul. Bittul is personal nullification. It's the ability to transcend our own viewpoint and allow a higher truth. So breaking the matzah is breaking oneself in terms of ego, allowing room for others. We're not whole unless we have each other. We need others. We are vulnerable. Matzah teaches us humility, the opposite of ego, meaning that no, you're not complete on your own. You need to be part of a community. We need to have each other. And when we are with each other and we're united together, that's the quintessential wholeness. You can't be whole on your own. You need to be whole as part of a community, a part of a Jewish nation. So that's a meditation. Now we're up to, just looking at the time, we're up to Magid, number 5. What's Magid? Magid is when we recite the Haggadah and the 4 questions. 4 questions is part of Magid. Now, in Pesach, we're encouraged to ask questions. The more questions, the better. It's like all about questions. Ask for more insight. Ask for your soul. Read the Haggadah to awaken your soul. Ask questions. There's so many symbols on the table that elicit questions. There's so many instances and interesting ideas within the Haggadah that make great discussions. And especially for children, we put all these symbols on the table because we want to elicit questions from the children as well. So Magid is all about questions. The more questions, the better. And the lesson of Magid is to tell the story, teach the story, study, learn some more. Torah study expands your horizon and challenges your ego and brings you to a deeper place inside of yourself. Try not to let a day pass without some serious learning time. And now it's so much easier to learn. You can tune into the rabbi for 5 minutes and learn with the rabbi every morning. That's learning, but carve out some time to learn, like Magid, to stimulate your mind, connect with the Torah, ask questions, really expand your horizons, and carve out some time for learning. Now, the meditation on Magid is that the Haggadah is the story of our lives. All of the harsh and oppressive forces in our personal Egypt, okay, and our liberation from them. So the Haggadah is not just a story that happened thousands of years ago. It's actually happening right now. It's your story. And each of us, Mitzrayim, it comes from the word Meitzar, which is constrictive. Each one of us has constrictiveness, some things that are constricting us from personal growth, from happiness. We each have our personal Egypt, okay? We have a story. If we convince ourselves that our constraints are normal, they're healthy, these are my constraints, you can't free yourself if you accept your constraints. Have you ever faced your fears? I know this is not a conversation, but I know I have faced a few fears, and it's actually really, really freeing. I've faced fears of public speaking. That's something that, it doesn't come naturally to me. Thank God my husband is so gifted that I kind of left it to my husband to do all the teaching because he's so brilliant and so perfect and wonderful. Where do I come in, So in the beginning, when the shul was starting, it was like, listen, he does that best. Let him do that. I'll do other things. But then, thank God, as the shul grew and grew, and our women's group grew so much, I realized that I have to face my fears. It's not fair, to hold back. Because I have these fears, I have to be able to share things, teach, learn from each other. We need to get together as women and learn. And so I literally just faced my fears. I'm not sure why, it's like fear is usually just not, rational, but a fear is a fear. You can't tell somebody not to be fearful of something, it's a fear. And so, I mean, and also physically, I faced my fears this week. I took my son. We went for my mother-in-law's birthday on Sunday to New York, and then quickly, I took my son Yosef, who really loves to snowboard. I took him in New York. We went up to Hunter Mountain, and I skied, but I always stayed away from the blacks. It was always and I said to myself, you know what? It's the last skiing day of the season. I am doing this. I'm going to own. Listen, I'll get down, I'll roll down, but I'm going to face my fears. I'm going down a black diamond, and I faced it. I know it's not a spiritual thing, but actually I find skiing very spiritual. I feel closer to Hashem up there on the mountain. But it was like something like a physical fear that I always had, that I always like, black, I'm staying away from black. Or even before I went, are there any blacks there? Are there any? I would always ask people, any blacks? And this time on Monday, I was like, I'm just doing it. And I went, and it was actually fine. And then I went back again, and then I tried another. And when I finished, I looked at the kids, I'm like, I'm so proud of myself. I went down a black, So whatever fear you have, if you just ever face it, it's so freeing. You take something that you're fearful of, something that's holding you back, and you face it head on, and you take it on, and you feel that personal freedom. And then one facing of fears leads to more faith. You realize, like, wow, first of all, you get addicted to the feeling of being able to face your fears and want to face more and more fears. So on Pesach, we tell the story, our story, by defining the parameters of our internal exile And we begin the process of redemption, meaning whatever it is, whatever is holding you back. I mean, skiing a black diamond is not really like the biggest deal. But the point is that whatever it is, public speaking or whatever it is that's holding you back, you're not able to actualize your full potential if you don't face your fears. You have to face them head on and go for it. And you know what? If you don't if you're not successful, that's okay, but at least you tried. So we learn from Magid to ask questions, grow, face our fears, talk about our story, complete our story properly, meaning, each one of us is our own Haggadah, each one of us is our own story. And the way we actualize our story and have more of a complete story is if we face our fears and write that chapter instead of keeping that chapter shut. Now we come to Rachza. This is the 6th step, and we are going to wash our hands again, but this time with a blessing. Now, we just went through 5 steps, right? So once we're elevated to a higher level of holiness through these 5 steps, okay, now we're at 6. So now we're feeling good. We have 5 steps of holiness. We've really accomplished a lot, right? We wash our hands again to properly cleanse and prepare ourselves for the next stage of spiritual growth, right? The next 5 steps. So we take our newly formed psychological mindset of freedom from the first 5 steps, and we begin to actualize it in our material lives. So here we're actualizing it, we're washing our hands, we're making a blessing, and we feel accomplished because we've reached a point that we can now go even further in our spiritual growth. Now, the meditation on this is that with being in this space, right, this new mindset of freedom and learning, arrogance could come. That post-learning arrogance is very dangerous, where you feel like, oh, I accomplished this, I've been learning. This is like the religious and scholarly pompousness of I know it all and I'm holier than thou. But this is where the meditation comes in. We have to remain humble, real, and authentic despite our accomplishments. Despite our spiritual accomplishments, we always need to remain humble, real, and authentic. Because the truth is, from all the learning, if a person is very learned and they're not humble, it means that they didn't really learn properly. Because the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. Meaning the closer you get to God, the more you realize how much you don't know. And that should bring out humility, not arrogance. So if learning Torah brings out arrogance, perhaps it's not, perhaps that Torah is not being properly learned or taught. Now we're up to, we washed our hands, we made a blessing. Now we're up to Mozi Matza. Now, Mozi Matza is 2 steps. We say Mozi Matza, it's Mozi and then Matzah. So what's Mozi? Mozi is reciting the blessing of Hamotzi, right? He extracted bread from the earth. Hamotzi lecha mina aretz, right? Now we begin to integrate. Now we begin the process of integrating the spiritual and the material with making the blessing. So the first blessing on the matzah. Here, matzah focuses on the positive side of materialism, on its great potential, which is released when we reveal the divine spark within it, meaning that materialism is not bad. Materialism is good, but only if we reveal the divinity, the divine spark within that materialism. So we extract. Now that we're in the position of extracting the opportunities, the sparks in the materialism, right? In everything we come in contact with, or anything we own, even the materialistic parts of our lives, a time to integrate the material and the spiritual. The matzah is food, which is very physical, but it's holy food, right? Matzah is holiness. It's the bread of faith, right? Judaism doesn't advocate shunning the world, right? But utilizing all of our gifts and extracting the productive and meaningful possibilities inherent in them. So whatever it is that's purely material in our lives, we have the ability to extract from within it a spark of godliness, whatever it could be. You could look at anything materialistic and say, I could make that holy. I could elevate that. It's like two sides of a coin. Everything physical has a spiritual component, but we have to merge it. We need to uncover it and merge it together, like our bodies and our souls. So that's what Mozi teaches us. Now, reciting the blessing of the matzah and eating it is the matzah. Now, by eating the matzah, right? What is matzah? Is the food of our affliction, food of our faith, but it's also the food of bittul, right? Self-nullification, humility, right? As we talked, that the matzah is flat, we assume its qualities, right? The qualities of simplicity, it's just flour and water. The qualities of humility and the qualities of holiness. As the Rebbe Maharash, one of the Lubavitcher Rebbes, he writes that eating matzah is like eating godliness. The first night of Passover, the Rebbe says, the matzah is called the bread of faith. Okay, on the second night of Passover, it is called the bread of healing. So matzah actually is a big mitzvah to eat matzah. And you're supposed to eat a kazayas of matzah, quite a bit of matzah. I think it's like 3/4, don't quote me, but like 3/4 of a whole matzah, quite a bit of matzah. And eating the matzah, when we first eat the matzah, we're not supposed to talk. It's supposed to be a time of just, holiness and eating the matzah. So we're really, imbuing holiness and materialism together. The matzah is food, but it's holiness, it's holy food. Like the Rebbe says, it's a bread of faith, it's a bread of healing, right? And the Talmud describes matzah also as bread of poverty. So we, in terms of meditating, we extract the possibilities in our life, but maintain perspective and balance. Like we try not to, or do not live a narcissistic existence, feeling that we must maintain the most luxurious lifestyle. But even if you're blessed with wealth, doesn't mean you have to like rip everyone's eyes out, you can cherish simplicity, refinement, modesty, and not to feel pressured, even if you don't have an abundance of wealth, not to feel pressure to mimic your neighbors or friends, do things according to your capacity, learn from the matzah, humility, refinement, modesty, let your dignity shine from within, and people will love you much more this way. Don't try to impress people. Learn from the matzah, become comfortable with yourself internally, and the people around you will feel more comfortable with you. So there's so much that we could learn from matzah, but for me, it's like, when I look at matzah, I think of simplicity because the ingredients, I think of humility because it's so flat. And I think that, wow, by eating the matzah, by ingesting the matzah, hopefully I'll glean some of that simplicity and humility. Now we're up to step 9. We are up to maror, eating the bitter herbs. Now, remember what happens when we're eating the bitter herbs. We're remembering the pain. We remember the pain. And we know that here in this, we're remembering the pain of past, but also, like I said, it's very much a present holiday. And we have to remember the pain and know that here in this world, there is unfortunately pain, bitter pain. Yet here is where we can attain the highest growth. It's like the pain of growth. Us in this world, we can attain so much, where people who have passed on can't attain any higher spirituality. That's why we will, give charity in someone's name, or we make a Kadesh in some way. We do things, we do mitzvot down here on earth in the name of someone's neshama, because that neshama, once that neshama left this world, it can't grow on its own, which is so incredible, because you think of a neshama which is so holy, and it's up in heaven with Hashem, the Holy of Holies, and it can't attain more growth. But us down here in our physical bodies, in a very physical, crazy world, we can actually attain growth, and so much more. We can help a neshama up in heaven grow even higher through acts of mitzvot, action, right? The bitter Mara teaches us about the process of growth, that setbacks and pain in life strengthen us. The Mara is dipped. What do? We take the romaine lettuce and we put the Mara in the romaine lettuce, we wrap it, and we put it into sweet charoset, right? To demonstrate that even when we need to feel bitterness, its purpose and objective is for us to reach greater freedom. It's not all bitter. Our challenges are not all bitter. They're stepping stones. There is sweetness. It's not just Maror, but it's charoset as well. And the meditation on Maror is that now you can begin to discover the greatest gift of life, or one of the greatest gifts of life, empathy, to be there for another human being in their pain, to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, I am here for you, and really mean it and live it. Meaning that, unfortunately, there is pain in the world. And the idea is to look out for people around us who are going through pain and be there for them. I am here for you. And that's what we can learn from Maror, to really look around and see, how can I bring some charoset to somebody else's Maror? How can I merge? If I'm going through a good time in life, how can I share my charoset with somebody else's Maror? Let them dip their Maror in my charoset and feel alleviated a little bit from their pain. Now we're up to the 10th step, and that is Korach. Korach is the Hillel sandwich. Okay, now the Hillel sandwich is a sandwich of matzah, maror, and in ancient times, the Paschal lamb. Now, this is where both worlds meet, the matzah and the maror. Now, life is a roller coaster of Pesach, which is the Paschal lamb, matzah, and maror, right? Rich moments, bland moments, and bitter moments. That is life. True liberation comes when we discover the art of sandwiching all the components of our life into a single tapestry or mosaic. Life is a single journey that encompasses all three dimensions: the Paschal lamb, the matzah, and the maror. And we tend to wait for the good times, and I'm guilty of that. We tend to wait for the good times, not realizing that it's all one life, and we need to be present for it all, not waiting for only the euphoric times, but realizing that the daily grind and challenges are all one life. It's all one Haggadah. It's all your story. The maror, the matzah, and the Paschal lamb. Like, I find myself personally saying, okay, after all this things are gonna calm down, and that's when I'm gonna, I'll enjoy. That's when, no. Life is all of it. And to be present during, the hopefully not too much maror, but the matzah and the maror, and in good times, and realize that it's all one Haggadah. It's all one story, and it's your story. So be present during each one of those moments. Now, the meditation for this is what we call bittersweet. We combine the matzah's earthiness and bittul, which is humility and self-nullification, and the bitterness of the maror, dipped in charoset, because there's a time for the sweet and a time for the bitter. But then we must learn to join them both into one seamless experience called life, the mission for which we are sent here by God, and then we have freedom. So when we put it all together, we realize that it's one life, and that entire life has a mission, and we're sent here by God to accomplish that mission. Then we have true freedom. And now we're feeling a little freer. We have Shulchan Aruch, right? It's the meal. Now we conquer the paradox of meat, wine, and don't forget the purpose, but enjoy. We're having this paradox here. So after the first 10 steps, which by the way, the first 10 steps correspond to the 10 sfirot in Kabbalah, which are, the 10 forces that connect Hashem, which is the infinite, unknowable God, and our world. It's the sfirot, those balls, the Kabbalah balls, those are the sfirot. So the 10 steps of the first 10 steps of the Seder correspond to, in Kabbalah, they correspond to the 10 sfirot. So after the first 10 steps of training to integrate spiritual freedom into our material lives, we are now ready for the first real test, eating an entire meal in an entirely new way, one that's permeated with a sense of higher presence and godliness. It's not sitting and eating. It's not gluttony. It's sitting and eating the matzah, the maror, and all the delicacies and saying, you know what? I'm able to merge the spiritual and the physical together as one and accomplish my mission. So the meditation for this is actually something very interesting. And that's to develop a good, has not connected with the lesson of Shulchan Aruch, of the meal, which is to integrate both the physical and spiritual. And a lot of times, like I'll give this example of like on our Shabbos table, or especially on our Seder table, we'll take out the nicest silver, right? If Judaism didn't think that materialism is not important, right? Then we were like, well, we can make Kiddush on a plastic cup. Why do we can light candles on a tea light, Why do we need silver goblets and silver candlesticks for this point? Because it's all about taking the physical and elevating the physical to spirituals. When you take that silver cup on Kadesh, or whatever beautiful cup you're going to use, and you make Kiddush on that cup, you've elevated that glass or that silver, that material, and actualized its potential, because everything that God created has potential, has to be actualized, meaning not just people, but things as well, even silver. And that's actualized and uplifted on the Shabbos table or at the Seder table. So the meditation of Shulchan Aruch is something entirely different, which is to develop a good feeling for the hospitality of guests by helping other people. Bring people to your table without judgment and develop your hospitality skills. So when you're sitting at the table, you could think like, how can I be like a better host or hostess? Like, how can I make people feel even more comfortable in my home and around my table? Now we're here for the Afikomen. This is where we bring in the Afikomen. It's Safon. We're at the 12th step of eating Afikomen. Now at this point in the Seder, we eat and enjoy the hidden, Safon means hidden, Afikomen. Now, at this point in our lives, we all have hidden stuff that may yet emerge, like the layers of an onion. When you peel one layer, a new one emerges, At this point, we've really, worked on ourselves. And when you work on yourself and you're open and honest, like a layer of an onion, things are uncovered that were hidden. The lesson is, don't be frightened. Don't get upset. On the contrary, now that we have achieved so much, new hidden skeletons might come out, since we're now capable of dealing with them. But enjoy the challenge. Also, this reminds you that you still need God. So reach for humility. So the idea is like, as you progress, through the Seder steps, you feel, a little bit more invincible. But here is where, challenges can come, and you realize that, you know what, I'm not so invincible. As I'm actualizing my potential, as I'm growing, I'm realizing that there are some hidden skeletons in my closet but I'm able to deal with them because I've gone through all these steps. But also you need to realize that you're not invincible, and you still need God to reach for humility. It's like, if you look at the afikomen piece, that's humility. That's that piece that's been hidden, right? And it's been stolen, so to speak, but that's only a test. You have to bring that piece of humility back, find it, because you're going to need it. You always need to have humility. So the matzah, that the afikomen represents humility, but here, when we're eating the afikomen, right, that hidden afikomen, we realize that, we're bringing that hidden piece of matzah that symbolizes humility. We covered it, but that was just for show. Now we're uncovering the humility, and we keep it with us because we always need to have humility. Now, the meditation for tzafan, which means hidden, is after we have eaten a complete meal as free people, a material meal, eaten in a spiritual and refined way, we now have the power to reveal that which is hidden and unconscious. Tzafan is hidden. Something, now we have the power to reveal that which is hidden and unconscious within ourselves. And now we have the confidence to take it on and achieve greater heights in our lives. So we have the power to reveal what is hidden, but we also have, through going through all these steps of refinement, we have the confidence to take it on to achieve even greater heights in our lives. Going to Beirach, which is reciting the grace after meals, we're at step 13. What do we do when we bench? We thank Hashem for the meal and all our blessings. So now you can begin to bless God for every moment, every encounter, and every experience in your life. Beirach gives us the power. The meditation is that Beirach gives us the power to ensure that the meal, which is symbolic of all of our material, mundane experience, will yield the spiritual energy that lies within its divine spark. So everything material, like I said, has divine sparks that have to be revealed. Everything material has a spiritual component. And Beirach, which means to bless, means to draw down. Basically, we're drawing down spirituality and godliness into this world. How? By thanking God for everything, for the meal, everything he provides us, but specifically in this context, for the delicious, beautiful meal that we just enjoyed. And the 14th step is Hallel. What's Hallel? Hallel is praise, reciting psalms of praise. Now we feel whole again, like the way it was in the days of the first temple, so to speak, that wholeness, that completion. Now we begin to express praise for every moment, because nothing is taken for granted. Every breath you take and every move you make is an opportunity for praise and thanksgiving. And as we know, studies have shown that the more gratitude you show, the happier you are. And so by taking a moment to, even after benching, to sit together and to read Hallel and to praise Hashem, after we've done everything in our power to achieve freedom, we let go. We've done everything. Now we let go. And this is the meditation. We let go, let go, let it go, right? What's that song? Let it go, let it go, and say Hallel, and through these words of praise, we place Hashem, we place ourselves actually in Hashem's hands, and we kind of like surrender to God to complete whatever we cannot do on our own, because we do need the help of Hashem to complete our our mission. So we can't do it all on our own, right? And we kind of surrender to Hashem, and to conclude the process of reaching complete freedom, because the fact is that we need Hashem's help to reach that personal freedom and that personal liberation. We do. And Hallel teaches us to, you know what? I accomplished, I worked hard, I tried hard. Now, Hashem, this is where you come in. I need your help. And by praising Hashem and acknowledging Hashem and the greatness of Hashem, and that God, that you need Hashem, that's when he comes in and pushes you over the finish line. And now for our 15th step is Nirza. Nirza is what? Nirza means like pleasing or favorable. Nirza is Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. So next year in Jerusalem. So unlike the previous 14 step, this last and final step doesn't have any prayer, doesn't have any action. Our service is pleasing and favorable to Hashem. And we have reached a point that transcends words, that transcends praise. After we've completed our Seder service, we are accepted favorably, Nirza, by God. And we are ready for the final and complete freedom and redemption. And that's why we say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. It transcends action. It transcends prayers. It's beyond. It's next year in Jerusalem. And so Nirza, which means pleasing or favorable, the meditation for Nirza is God's desire in creating the world was that we build a personal, intimate relationship with him, and that we transform our animal soul and our world into a divine abode, like a place that Hashem feels comfortable to dwell, right? So as it says, make for me a place and I will, v'shachanti b'tocham, I will dwell. Create a world that Hashem says that I feel comfortable to dwell within. Sure, you can ask many questions, but at the end of the day, this is what your creator desires. You can ask a lot of questions about Judaism, about faith, and Passover is about asking questions. But at the end of the day, this is what your creator desires. Hashem desires for us to make this world into a dwelling place for him, for Hashem to, so to speak, feel comfortable living in this world or dwelling in this world. And this is what our creator desires. So we need to embrace it and love it and wish each other next year in Jerusalem. Now, if anyone has any questions about this, I know it was a Zoom on Zoom. We zoomed through the 15 steps, but I'm going to check the chat if anyone has any questions. Okay. Does anyone want to unmute yourself if you have any questions about Pesach or the 15 steps? I hope I didn't speak too quickly. I was trying to keep it to an hour, but it's a little difficult with 15 steps to 1 hour. But actually, I tried doing the math. I'm like, I don't know if I could keep to 3 to 4 minutes for each step. But it is 8:10 now. So if anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself. I think you can unmute yourself. Mara would have to answer that. And you can ask a question, or you can put it into the chat box. But if you don't have any questions, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you gleaned and learned from the class. I know I have. I really enjoyed learning together with you. And I think I'm going to look at my Seder steps this year in a different way. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn together with you. And like I always say, thank you for zooming in, because I'd be talking to myself. So thank you all, and lots of love. And I hope to see you on Shabbat. We're having a speaker, a Friday night dinner. You're all welcome to join. And then just really wishing you all a kosher and happy and healthy Pesach or Passover. So for you and your families.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
and to you too. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey,
Thank you.
Deborah. Hi, Donna. Hey, Scheiner. How you doing, Ellen? Hi, Helene Siegel. It's really nice. Hi, Carol. Amy Naz. Eleanor, how are you? How you doing? Yafa with a J. All the it's really good to see you all. Lots of love and thank you for zooming in. I really appreciate